all right, everyone. What's up? What's up? It's me again, Jay Alejandro, and I've been debating on getting the story out. One because I want to get it right. I want to understand it. Um, I mean, it's not really complex, but I want to get it. I want to understand it personally before I get it out there. And it's a story that you guys have probably heard before. Maybe not it in its entirety. I mean, I'm sure that you've heard the two names of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible, right? The Old Testament. But I want to get into that story because, for one, I personally never knew the story in its entirety. Um, I started reading Genesis, and as I'm reading Genesis, there's so many uh, individuals or characters that are important in there, and their lives pretty much pass by pretty quick. You're talking 2 or 3 chapters, and you're moving on to the next generation. But Sodom and Gomorrah is one of those stories that when you first read it, you're just like, "What? Like, this is crazy." And so I want to share it with you guys. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe you haven't. If you haven't, be ready for an incredible ride, and I hope I can do it justice by the notes that I've taken, by reading it multiple times. And I took notes because I really, 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 really want to give it its just dues to the story. I mean, it's an incredible story. So, and I think you could take a lot from it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Sodom and Gomorrah. Oh, and by the way, I'm actually going to post some links because I had help from some websites. So first and foremost, I want to give you some context behind, what happens there, because there's a lot of story before that, before you get to know what happened there and why it happened, really. So first, you're going to be introduced to Abram, his wife, Sarai, and his nephew, Lot. So these individuals were coming out of Egypt, and it specifically says in the Bible they were traveling up out of Egypt. So that's important to know, because if you're looking at the map of that time, or just really the map now, so they were traveling out of Egypt, up out of Egypt. Try saying that fast. Up out of Egypt, and into the south of Jordan. The Bible doesn't necessarily say that they got into conflict or anything like that, but Abram does mention so that they don't come into conflict. You can decide. He actually let his nephew decide if you wanted to take the right side of the land, or if you wanted to take the left side of the land, and I'll take vice versa, right? So you take the left, I take the right. If you take the right, I'll take the left. Very simple. As to not fight about who owns what or what belongs to who. And so the side that Lot actually took was close to Sodom. So this is the first time that we're going to hear about Sodom, right? And the other side was Canaan. And that's the side that Abram decided to take, right? The side that was closer to Canaan. And now at this time, there were 4 kings. And these kings, I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to butcher them, but I'm going to put them right here. So these 4 kings actually were going to war with these 5 kings. I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to butcher them, right? But these 5 kings, out of these 5, there was Sodom and Gomorrah, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. And these 5 kings and 4 kings were going at war back to back. And at some point, right? So I'm not going to get into full context of that. I mean, you guys can read it, but because I don't want to take away from the Sodom and Gomorrah story. But during the battle, something happened to what led the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah to flee into the mountains, right? Because at some point, the 4 or the 5 that they were with turned against them, and the kings that took what belonged or what was in Sodom they also took what belonged to Lot. And, this could have been the servants, the goods, pretty much everything. And a confidant of Abram actually, escaped that and was able to go tell him, that, hey, they took your nephew, they took, his belongings and all that stuff. So Abram, he gathered his servants, armed them up. So you can say that was a small army of his. And he went out and fought against these kings and actually got back everything that belonged to Lot. And he may have, from what scripture says, that he may have actually gotten some stuff that belonged to Sodom as well. And I'll explain that because as he was returning to his land, he was actually approached by two individuals. And one individual is the first time you'll ever hear of this person in the Bible and the last time you ever hear of this person. And some say that this was possibly Jesus for the resemblance. You can look into it yourself. But the first person that actually approached Abram was a high priest by the name of, correct me if I'm wrong, but Melchizedek. He approached Abram with wine and bread as a way of like to exchange and, say, congratulations, maybe. And because of that beautiful exchange, Abram actually gave him 10% of everything he owned. Right? That was a beautiful thing. And once again, he was a high priest. And this was the last time that we actually hear of Melchizedek. The other person that actually approached Abram after this was the previous king of Sodom, right? The king that fled into the mountains. Now, when he approached Abram, it was not the same as Melchizedek. He actually approached him, wanting all his belongings back, everything that he had gotten back from Sodom or that he won back from the kings. And he actually approached Abram and said, hey, you can take all the goods, just give me back the people. Abram actually had made a covenant with God. And he was smart. Abram was smart. He knew of the wickedness of Sodom. And so what he did was he respectfully declined. He said, you know what, I made a covenant with God, and you can have all your belongings back. You can have everything back. And I think it was more of a way of Abram knowing that he didn't want anyone to be able to take credit for his wealth or his success. So he allowed King Bera, that was his name, King Bera. He allowed King Bera to get everything back. Now we're going to fast forward a couple chapters because in between all that, which was chapter 17, chapter 18, chapter 16 and chapter 17, Abram actually gets a wife's servant pregnant, and he gets blamed for it, right? But it was her idea. But then finally we get to chapter 18, and Abram is visited by three men. It also states in the Bible that it was God. So out of the three men, one was God. In this chapter, God is talking to him about Sarah having a baby. The reason why Abram actually had a child with his wife's servant was because she wanted a child, and so God told him that Sarah would have a child at 90 years old. Now Sarah heard this, and she actually laughed. She did have the child, and this is actually when Sodom and Gomorrah is mentioned again. So God mentions to Abram that there's a cry coming from Sodom. My interpretation of that is someone calling for help, someone calling for God. So Abram asks him, what are you going to do down there? Or what's the point? And he's pretty much saying he's going to destroy. Like God is telling him he's going to destroy, depending on, the situations. Abram asked God, as the other two men are heading towards Sodom, he asks, Are you going to destroy the righteous along with the wicked? He asked this question primarily because he knows that that's where Lot is. Lot actually decided to reside in Sodom after his uncle helped him out and saved them pretty much. Fast forward to Genesis 19. The two men that went forward without God, they're met at the gate of Sodom by Lot. And, Lot immediately sees them, stands up, bows. So he invites them over to his home and he prepares a meal for them. Or right before they're going to bed, some men, old and young, actually approach Lot's home. They call out for Lot and they say, hey, where are those men that you just invited over to your home? Bring them out so that we may meet them. Now, meet them could actually be interpreted and has been interpreted as we want to know them intimately. Because remember, Sodom and Gomorrah, anything goes here. I guess from what I've read or what I've researched is that it also could be interpreted as bring them out so we could have sex with them, and that's actually what it says in some versions, some translations. I'm sorry. Homosexuality actually existed at that time. So yeah, pretty intense, and that's wild. But what's even crazier, I guess, is that Lot actually offers his two daughters to them instead of the men. He's like, hey, take my daughters. They haven't been with men. Take them instead of the guys that I invited over my home, which are the angels, right? But actually, what happens was, these guys are like enraged because now Lot is trying to tell them what to do, and he's a foreigner. And so that's how they feel, and they react, and they actually try to force their way into his home. They're angels. So they actually blind the men and disorient them. And they actually ask Lot if, there's anyone else in the home, if there's anyone else in Sodom that he knows, maybe his son-in-laws or sons. But pretty much he has to get everyone he knows and get him out of Sodom. Lot approaches his son-in-laws and tells them, what's going to happen, fire and brimstone. And they actually, they think he's joking. They laugh. And, he can't take them with him. So Lot hesitates at this point. He hesitates leaving Sodom. And the angels have to physically take him by the hand and escort him out, or, fly him out. I really don't know how it happened. But it just says that they escorted him out, him and his family. And in some ways, this is like us. It's difficult for us to let go of our ways and let go of all we know and trust God with, every aspect of our lives. But, I'm a testament that it can happen, and letting go of old ways is difficult when you've never read the Bible. You don't know any other way. You think, man, all I know, like, how could I let go of that? But I digress, because once you get into the rest of what happens, or even really the rest of the Bible, you're kind of like, yeah, I want to let go of sin. But anyways, like us, we're scared to find God. We're afraid to find him, or we're afraid to give him all of us, pretty much every aspect of our lives. We want to keep our sins. And it's tough, we want to party on Saturdays and we want to go to church on Sundays. But he was advised to flee and head to the mountains. But Lot actually asked if he could head to a nearby town, which was closer. And he was granted that, right? And so he was told that once he reached that town, which was Zoar, Zoar, that God would do what he promised. He would rain down fire and brimstone, and he did just that on Sodom and Gomorrah. And that fire and brimstone was flaming sulfur, right? So it was all gone, vanished. He and his family were told specifically, flee and don't look back. And unfortunately, for Lot's wife, she was the one that looked back. And like I said, this is similar to us, not wanting to let go of our ways, our sinful nature, and want to hold on to that. And so she actually turned into a pillar of salt. So she literally looked back because she didn't want to let go of what was there. Or maybe it was an act of disobedience. But she turned into salt. And then there's more to that and more to Genesis, and I hope and wish that I did its just dues in providing the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the story of Abram and Lot and Abram's wife Sarah. But like I said, I'm gonna provide the links so that you guys could get more understanding of it, and really go to the Bible. Read the Bible. Read whatever version, whatever translation you want. Doesn't matter. Just read the Bible from beginning to end. Or I would advise, before even getting to Genesis, I would advise, reading the Gospels, reading Mark, reading Matthew, Luke, and John, and you can read them in that order. But it's just my suggestion, my recommendation. You don't have to take it. But guys, I appreciate if you sat through that entire commentary of Sodom and Gomorrah, of Abram and Lot. And there's, like I said, there's more to it. So if you sat through it, I appreciate you. Subscribe, please comment, and please share this if you enjoyed it.